Today's talk is on taking refuge. What is taking refuge? Yesterday, we did the full moon ceremony, which we do every month at the full moon. In the full moon ceremony, we start by discussing the precepts and finding any ways we may be out of line with the precepts, letting go of those. And then when we enter the ceremony, we release all karma. We invite in all the Buddhas and ancestors, and then we retake our vows. It's a very beautiful ceremony. And doing it yesterday felt like the perfect way to start the day. So yesterday's discussion, each month we discuss a different precept. And yesterday we discussed, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. What is it to take refuge? And I'd like to speak on that just a little bit more today. And where I hope to end up is very similar to where we ended up last week, which is fearlessness. So, how does taking refuge lead to fearlessness? I've been hearing from people in the past few weeks about fears. So these are pragmatic things. These are not theories. This is how we can live our life in a way that leads toward fearlessness. Taking refuge is a turning backwards into our practice. We take refuge in the Buddha. We take refuge in the Dharma. We take refuge in the Sangha. We take refuge in the Buddha as the perfect teacher. We take refuge in the Dharma as the perfect teachings. We take refuge in the Sangha as the perfect life. The Buddha is the embodied teacher, not just the historical Buddha, and including the historical Buddha, but not only the historical Buddha, but the embodied example of teachings in us, in the way we are. The physical embodiment of the teachings, the actual doing. The embodied example of waking up. The Buddha was just a person like us, no more, no less, a person. A person who, just like us, had questions, had suffering, and really wanted to find an end to suffering, just like us. So he left his home and went out on the spiritual journey, searching. He met with teachers. He stayed with those teachers, learning all that they had to teach him. He met friends along the path, and he also met the teachings that were available at that time. All of these things were his journey. And ultimately, the Buddha's spiritual awakening was not dependent on somebody else, somebody outside. As fabulous as the gurus were that he met with, the teachers that he met with, as great as they were, they could not teach him what he needed to know. They could point him in the direction, but he had to do it himself. So the Buddha also represents our own awakening. This shining example of our own waking up ourselves, rather than waiting for someone else to tell us what to do in each situation. We find awakening here. When we repeat our vows of taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we make prostrations, of course. We say, I take refuge in the Buddha. May all beings embody the great way, resolving to awaken. May all beings embody the great way, resolving to awaken. The great way is our practice of awakening. Awakening is the great way. I like the way that Shohaku Okumura phrases this in his book on living by vow. In many ways, he has studied Dogen for so long and gotten to know Dogen, the founder of Soto Zen, so intimately that even when Okumura Roshi speaks, he starts to sound like Dogen. It's quite beautiful. So I like that a lot. When we embody the Great Awakening, we awake to the awakening mind. It's a strange expression, but that's the reality. We awaken the awakening mind in order to wake up. We awaken the awakening mind in order to wake up. We usually think we're awake as we go about our life, but really we're living in a dream. We think all these things that we go through are real, but we have this creation of our mind, the way we think the world is something we've created. And this thinking mind, this thinking and creating and this fiction keeps us from what is. So as we practice, as we awake the awakening mind in order to wake up, it's a process of letting go of our delusion that I am separate from you, which we call the ego or the small self. This delusion that I am separate from you, that there's a me that's separate from you, is counter to the reality that we're all connected. So as we let go of this idea, this false idea, this dream that I'm separate from you, then the reality of the universe naturally presents itself. And in this natural presentation of the reality of the universe, there's so much spaciousness. And there's compassion. Because when we realize we're all in this together, we can't help but to love each other. Every being becomes so precious to us. It's a very natural response. Feelings of like, dislike, and aversion are creation of our minds that separate us. When we let go and allow the awakening mind to awake, then we understand we're all in this together, and therefore everyone matters. And then everyone becomes so precious. This is compassion. We're not looking for a solution outside of ourselves. We're not looking for some God to fix things for us. We're not looking for someone else to tell us what to do in each situation. We're finding the answer that naturally is present. And this road leads straight toward compassion, which is already here. We just need to get our deluded thinking out of the way in order to allow it to shine and manifest. Do you remember last week we talked about compassion? We talked about compassion and the way that compassion allows us fearlessness. All the ways that compassion bring us a freedom from fear. When we let go of our focus on ourselves and our worries, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to me? And instead, focus on how can I make your life easier? What do you need right now? Then this compassion allows us to let go of our fears, which are very self-focused. Fear is a self-focused creation. Fear comes from our minds. And the path of Buddhism teaches us how to become free from fear. Okamura Roshi goes on in terms of compassion. An aspect of unsurpassable mind, this is the awakened mind, the great way, embodying the great way. Another aspect of unsurpassable mind is compassion for all beings. When we awake to the reality that has not yet been processed by our ego-centered mind, we cannot help but have compassion for all beings. We realize that we live together with all beings, supported by our networks of interconnection. We share air, water, life by offering ourselves to each other. We live supported by all beings. In turn, we must support all beings. This is compassion. Supported by all beings, we must support all beings. We are dependent on each other in this way. And getting our own fears, delusions, ideas out of the way allows us so much space and freedom. This is the beauty of this practice. This is embodying the great way. This is refuge in Buddha. Dharma. What is Dharma? Dharma is the path, the teachings that we have. So Dharma comes to us from 2,600 years of practitioners doing this ahead of us, and also the people who came before them, the paths that led them to practice. So the body of people practicing together, waking up together, gives us path, the how-to, the sutras. The chant that we recite in the full moon ceremony is, I take refuge in Dharma. May all beings deeply enter the sutras. Wisdom like an ocean. May all beings deeply enter the sutras. Wisdom like an ocean. The sutras are the recorded teachings of all those who came before us. They're so rich. We have this guide. We don't have to make it up ourselves, not because there's some, supremely knowledgeable one being who's telling us everything, but because people before us also found this path and tried it and found it helpful and improved upon it and embodied it and had each other to rely on and awakened. This is the gift of the Buddha to us, is the path to awakening. All we have to do to find freedom from suffering is follow the path. We don't have to believe in something outside of ourselves. We have to, through our own embodied practice, we find faith in the teachings. Because as we do them, we learn that they work. How many examples of this have you found in your own life? I remember when I was learning about right speech, for example, which is part of the teachings, I wrote it down on a sticky note and would keep it on my computer. It's still nearby. The stickiness came off because it stayed for so long, but it's still there as a guide to myself for how to speak or how to write when I'm on the computer with others. And over time, this practice became very embodied. And I found that my relationships with others were less problematic and more full. They felt more nurturing. So by embodying the teachings, taking the teachings which come to us from the Buddha, using it, and then trying it out myself, my life changed. Not instantly, but over time. And I still keep it there because I still need that. Even having reminded myself or learned these teachings internally, I need to remind myself when I feel a little stuck. Okay, this is important. Remember, is this the right time for this? That's a good question. And I'll take myself through those. So this is how we take the teachings from the body of teachers and make them their own. This is deeply entering the sutras. Of course, we learn from the sutras, we study the sutras, the teachings, but then we have to make them our own. And the way that we do that is by embodying them, by letting ourself, our ego, get out of the way through our practice and really taking it on. By practicing zazen, as we sit, letting go of our thoughts, our ideas, our worries, our fears. And as our mind settles, the truth of the awakened way very naturally shines. Okamura Roshi uses Dogen's Mountains and Waters Sutra, which I love, to talk about this reality itself being a sutra. This is our unique gift from our founder, A.A. Dogen. The reality of the whole universe as a teacher to us. Dogen Zenji wrote, "These mountains and waters of the present are the manifestation of the way of ancient Buddhas. These mountains and waters of the present are the manifestation of the way of the ancient Buddhas." The reality of all beings itself, this is Okamura Rishi writing now, the reality of all beings is itself a sutra or a teaching. Not only the mountains and waters, but also the birds singing, the sun shining, and everything happening around us are sutras teaching us the reality of being. They teach impermanence and interdependence. Nothing lasts forever. Everything is always changing, and there is no fixed ego or substance. All beings in the universe teach this reality. The phrase deeply entering the teachings, or the sutra, deeply entering the sutras, doesn't require that we read all of the Buddhist texts. Although reading is an important part of entering the teachings, the deeper meaning is really to awaken to the reality before our eyes, the reality that we actually live. The deeper meaning is to awaken to the reality before our eyes, the reality that we actually live. The meaning of taking refuge in the Dharma is that we value Dharma more than our own limited opinions, our own limited views. This is, I take refuge in Dharma. Deeply entering the sutras, wisdom like an ocean, infinite, boundless, as far as the eye can see, wisdom arising naturally. The third refuge is the Sangha, the beautiful Sangha treasure of each other, of our embodied practice, guided by the path, together with each other, together knowing that we're not separate from each other, that we depend on each other. And those of us who practice have made this intention on purpose. We've made this intention out loud to each other. I'm here for you. I will be here for you. And knowing that we can depend on each other offers us so much richness in our life. We don't have to pretend that we're doing this alone. We don't have to do this alone, even though doing this alone is a complete idea. We think we're doing this alone. This is also a delusion because, again, we all are in this universe together, dependent on each other. So refuge in Sangha is also refuge in the truth of this life. Refuge in harmony, together, in unity. I take refuge in Sangha. May all beings support harmony in the community, free from hindrance. May all beings support harmony in the community, free from hindrance. Refuge in Sangha gives us a way of reflecting on ourselves. You know, we can't see ourselves. We have to see ourselves as reflected back in the face of each other. When I used to work with hospice, there was a period of time where all of my patients were quite elderly. And I thought of my patients as a bowl full of precious jewels. This beautiful bowl that you have to hold precious jewels carefully. And that's how I felt about these elderly people. Each one of them was so different. This one is red, very sparkly. This one is a very clear kind of amber color. And you never know how, all their qualities without examining them well. And each one gives us such a gift. And this is how I feel about Sangha as well. Every one of us is unique and wonderful in our own way. And every one of us has our own difficult things as well. And through these, we learn. We learn about each other and we learn about ourselves. In hearing about somebody's struggle with their mother or someone's differences with their family, we learn about the world around us in ways that we didn't have access to before. Oh, wow. That's how people think about that. Okay. I'm going to learn about that. Oh, that's very fascinating. So in our Sangha in particular, we get to learn about how New Yorkers see the world. We learn about how people from the Midwest might approach this. We learn about different political views. We learn about different personalities. We have engineers, we have social workers, we have professors, we have so many different types of qualities all together. And this is what makes us one beautiful Sangha. So too is this true for the whole world. Every one of us has a purpose and a place, and nobody does not belong. We're all in this together. This is the Sangha treasure. As we take refuge in the three treasures, as we give up our ideas of me as a separate entity, we give up our comparing mind. This is good. This is terrible. Oh, I like this part of the teachings. Oh, I don't like this so much. I like this person in the Sangha, but this one, I don't know about them. We start to really blend together in a beautiful alchemy that brings hope and purpose, not just to our own practice, but to the whole world around us. And this is how we will get through this moment, by supporting each other, by embodying the practice, by following the teachings laid out by the Buddha and the ancestors, and the teachings of the world around us. We let go of blame, a useless endeavor, because blame externalizes our discomfort. And we do what we can ourselves to wake up, facing our own fears, becoming accountable to ourselves, to the world around us, to the Sangha, by taking responsible action, by following the teachings. Do you see how they all go together? Everything I talk about is influenced by the other of the three treasures in this beautiful blend, this harmony. What the three refuges give us, this turning backwards, what it offers us, taking refuge in the three treasures, is connection, is the truth of the universe, is responsibility and accountability, is agency for our own actions. Everything is the Dharma, the teachings, even our difficulties, perhaps especially our difficulties. If you think about your own life, what do you remember the best? That day on a Sunday afternoon where you did absolutely nothing sitting in the sunshine, or that real struggle that you had and how you made it through and who supported you through that time and what you learned through that time. This is Dharma. The difficulties of our life teach us. They teach us how to face life directly. They offer us stability. And as we face our own fears, we very naturally become one who is fearless. As we naturally become one who is fearless, compassion shines of its own accord because there's no me in the way. It very naturally shines. And as we shine compassion naturally in our lives, in the world around us, not only can we not help but to love each other, even or especially those who are most challenging for us, we can't help but simply to love, including ourselves. It exudes from our pores. This is the offering of our practice. This is the offering of taking refuge, the safety of taking refuge in the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I encourage you all to take this seriously. You know, this week when we discussed the precepts before beginning the ceremony, one person later wrote that they had been having a hard time, and meeting with Sangha, they found, was exactly what they needed. So let's support each other on this path. Let's be here for each other, for the world around us. I'll close with a verse from the Dhammapada, which are the teachings of the Buddha. Your own self is your own mainstay. For who else could your mainstay be? With you, yourself, well trained, you obtain the mainstay difficult to obtain. I'll read it again. Your own self is your own mainstay. This is your stability. For who else could your mainstay be? With you, yourself, well trained, you obtain the mainstay hard to obtain. I take refuge in Buddha. You can join me if you want. I take refuge in Buddha. May all beings enter the great way, resolving to awaken. I take refuge in Dharma. May all beings deeply enter the sutras, wisdom like an ocean. I take refuge in Sangha. May all beings support harmony in the community, free from hindrance. Thank you.